tell me more about Nadia. She is a construction aficionado genius who's really good at building stuff from Serbia in the Siberian tundra. She came to work, tools on the hip. She's real good with a tractor. She's got 9 fingers now. Ooh. Okay, sorry. I'm trying not to read too far ahead, but I'm also trying to see if there's a good point to stop. Because either I was about to stop now, but I'm going to read like 3 more pages. Because it looks like there's a good spot to stop on the next turn. So Anne and Nadia and Simon took Rover 3 and drove back down the Chasma Borealis and around to the west, where one of the glaciers curling away from the cap thinned into a perfect rampway. The mesh of the rover's big wheels caught like a snowmobile's driving chain, running well over all the various surfaces of the cap. Over patches of exposed granular dust, low hills of hard ice, fields of blinding white CO2 frost, and the usual lace of sublimed water ice. Shallow valleys swirled outward in a clockwise pattern from the pole. Some of these were very broad. Crossing these, they would drive down a bumpy slope that curved away to right and left over both horizons, all of it covered by a bright, dry ice. This could last for 20 kilometers until the whole visible world was bright white. Then before them, a rising slope of the more familiar, dirty red water ice would appear, striated by contour lines. As they crossed the bottom of the trough, the world would be divided in 2, white behind, dirty pink ahead. Driving up the south-facing slopes, they found that the water ice, Driving up the south-facing slopes, they found the water ice more rotten than elsewhere. But as Anne pointed out, every winter, a meter of dry ice sat on the permanent cap to crush the previous summer's rotten filigree. So the potholes were filled on an annular schedule, and the rover's big wheels crunched cleanly along. Beyond the swirl valleys, they found themselves on a smooth white plain, extending to the horizon in every direction. Behind the polarized and tinted glass of the rover's windows, the whiteness was unmarred and pure. Once they passed a low ring hill, the mark of some relatively recent meteor impact, filled in by subsequent ice deposition. There's English is so fun. Filled in by subsequent ice deposit. They stopped to take borings, of course. Nadia had to restrict Anne and Simon to 4 borings a day. That's ridiculous, Nadia. 4? I know the meaning of the word. I just don't think it... Never mind, Alrock. Thank you. Once they passed a low ring hill, the mark of some relatively recent meteor impact, filled in by subsequent ice deposition. They stopped to take borings, of course. Nadia had to restrict Anne and Simon to 4 borings a day to save time and to keep the rover's trunks from being overloaded. And it wasn't just borings. They would often they would pass black isolated rocks resting on the ice like Magritte sculptures. Meteorites. Yeah, dude, I know that you're supposed to mine those. If I was traveling on Mars and I saw a black isolated rock resting in the snow, I would start hitting it with a pickaxe immediately. Meteorites. They collected the smallest of these and took samples from the larger ones. And once passed one that was as big as the rover. They were nickel iron for the most part, or stony chondrites. Chipping away at one of these, Anne said to Nadia, "You know, they found meteorites on Earth that came from Mars. The reverse happens too, although much less often. It takes a really big impact to jack rocks out of Earth's gravitational field fast enough to get them out here. Delta V of about 15 kilometers. I can't read. Sorry. I just gotta make it through one more page. The reverse, they found meteorites on Earth that came from Mars. The reverse happens too, although much less often. It takes a really big impact to jack rocks out of Earth's gravitational field fast enough to get them out here. Delta V of 15 kilometers per second, at least. I've heard it said that about 2% of the material ejected out of Earth's field would end up on Mars, but only from the biggest impacts, like the KT boundary impact. It would be strange to find a chunk of the Yucatan here, wouldn't it? But that was 60 million years ago, Nadia said. It would be buried under the ice. It would be buried under the ice. True. Later, walking back to the rover, she said, "Well, if they melt these ice caps, we'll find some. We'll have a whole museum of meteorites sitting around on the sand." Yeah, that is a strange thought. Finding an Earth fossil on Mars. Earth fossil with Walmart trash in it? Oh, I hope not. Although it would be exciting. Yeah. We're more likely to get a crashed Tesla. They crossed more swirl valleys, falling again into the up and down pattern of a boat over waves. This time the largest waves yet, 40 kilometers from crest to crest. They used the clocks to keep on a schedule, and parked from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. on hillocks or buried crater rims to give themselves a view during their stops. And they blacked the windows with double polarization to help them get some sleep at night. Because it's the northern summer right now, so it's kind of like when you go to Alaska or whatever and the sun never sets. And they set their windows with double polarization to help them get some sleep at night. Then one morning, as they crunched along, Anne turned on the radio and began to run checks with the aerosynchronous satellites. "It's not easy to find the pole," she said as she worked. "The early Terran explorers had a hell of a time in the north. They were always up there in summertime and couldn't see the stars. And they had no satellite checks." "So how did they do it?" Nadia asked, suddenly curious. Anne thought about it and smiled. "I don't know. Not very well, I suspect. Probably dead reckoning." Nadia became intrigued by the problem and started working on it on a sketch pad. Yeah, that's what they said, actually, Ugo, that the sun was like about, I don't remember what they said, how many degrees, but they were like, the sun is just, it just goes over the horizon. Like, but never sets. Double polarization is interesting. Two linear polarizers at 90-degree angles to each other can block almost all the light. The early Terran explorers had a hell of a time in the north. They were always up there in summertime and couldn't see the stars, and they had no satellite checks. "So how did they do it?" Nadia asked. Anne thought about it and smiled. "I don't know. Not very well, I suspect. Probably dead reckoning." Nadia became intrigued by the problem and started working on it on a sketch pad. Geometry had never been her strong point, but presumably at the North Pole, on a midsummer's day, the sun would inscribe a perfect circle around the horizon, never getting higher or lower. If you were near the pole then, and it was a midsummer's day, you might be able to use a sextant to make timed checks on the sun's height above the horizon. Was that right? "This is it," Anne said. "What?" They stopped the rover and looked around. The white plain undulated to the nearby horizon, featureless except for a couple of broad red contour lines. The lines did not form bullseye circles around them, and it didn't look like they were at the top of anything. "Where exactly?" Nadia asked. "Well, somewhere just north of here," Anne smiled again. "Within a kilometer or so. Maybe that way." She pointed off to the right. "We'll have to go over there a ways and check with the satellite again. A little bit of triangulation and we should be able to hit it on the nose. Plus or minus a few 100 meters. Anyway. If we just took the time, we could make it plus or minus a meter," Simon said enthusiastically. "Let's pin it down." So they drove for a minute, consulted the radio, turned to right angles, and then drove again, made another consolation. And then made another consultation. Finally, Anne declared they were there, or close enough. Simon programmed the computer to keep working on it, and they suited up and went out and wandered around a bit to make sure that they had stepped on it. Anne and Simon drilled a boring. Nadia kept walking in a spiral that expanded away from... Shh! 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 Did you seriously just interrupt Monday Book Club? Okay, I'm almost done. I have one paragraph left to read. Nadia kept walking in a spiral that expanded away from the cars. A reddish-white plane. The horizon some 4 kilometers away. Too close. It came to her in a rush, as during the black dune sunset, that this was alien. A sharp awareness of the tight horizon, the dreamy gravity, a world just so big and no bigger. And now she was standing right on its north pole. I'm sorry, we're so close to the end. I can't help but I'm encouraging this. Okay, teehee. A reddish white plane, and it came to her in a rush, as during the black dune sunset, that this was alien. A sharp awareness of the tight horizon, a world just so big and no bigger, and now she was standing on its north pole. It was LS equals 92. About as near midsummer as you could ask. So if she stood facing the sun and didn't move, the sun would stay right in front of her face for all the rest of the day, or the rest of the week for that matter. It was so strange. She was spinning like a top. If she stood still long enough, would she feel it? Her polarized faceplate reduced the sun's glare on the ice to an arc of crystalline rainbow points. It wasn't very cold. Okay, well, if you have ADHD, which I do too, just shut up. Nobody's moving your fingers. You can go somewhere else. You say you can't listen, and then you're interrupting everybody else's listening, including my own, listening to the sound of my own voice. But that's fine. I forgot what you asked. What did you want, by the way, dear? I'm sorry. I'm PMSing. I'm being too mean. Okay. Shh. You don't have to keep talking. Okay. High five. So if she stood facing the sun and didn't turn at all for the rest of the whatever, she was spinning like a top. If she stood long enough, would she feel it? Her polarized faceplate reduced the sun's glare on the ice to an arc of crystalline rainbow points. It wasn't very cold. She could just feel a breeze against her upraised palm. A graceful red streak of depositional laminae ran over the horizon like a longitude line. She laughed at the thought. There was a very faint ice ring around the sun, big enough that its lower arc just touched the horizon. Ice was subliming off of the polar cap and gleaming in the air above, providing the crystals in the ring. Grinning, she stomped her boot prints into the North Pole of Mars. Wow, that was such a nerdy chapter. I love it. What are we? Martians. Dirty, nerdy. Thank you, chat. Thank you. And I'm upset that I cannot hide how excited I get talking about laminate terrain.